The air hangs heavy, thick with the smell of salt and pine needles, a scent that used to promise peace. Now it just feels like a shroud. My knuckles are white on the steering wheel. The engine idles, a low growl mirroring the one in my gut. Up ahead, past the bend in the dirt road, sits the house. Our house. The summer house. Except it seems it's not just ours anymore. A car I don't recognize is parked crookedly in the driveway. A small, red, sporty thing that screams, midlife crisis, mixed with desperate attempt at youth. It doesn't belong here. Not beside the old Volvo wagon, the one packed with beach toys and worn towels and years of sand ingrained in the floor mats. My foot hesitates on the accelerator. My breath catches, sharp and painful in my chest. I know whose car that is. I know who is inside. The sun is setting, painting the sky in bruised purples and angry reds, a perfect backdrop for the scene unfolding just out of sight. This isn't how I imagined this evening. This isn't how I imagined any of this. My heart is a frantic bird trapped in a cage, beating itself against my ribs, desperate to escape. I grip the wheel tighter, the plastic digging into my palms. A wave crashes on the shore, a distant roar that sounds like the world breaking apart. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. We built a life here. Or I thought we did. Brick by brick, dream by dream. The summer house wasn't just property, it was the anchor. The place where the noise of the city faded, where the constant hum of expectation quieted down. It was sand between our toes, the taste of salt on our lips, the easy rhythm of days dictated by the tides. We'd bought it early in our marriage, a small, dilapidated cottage with a million flaws and infinite potential. We poured everything into it. Weekends weren't for brunch or shopping. They were for hammering, painting, sanding floors until our fingers ached and our faces were smeared with dust and sweat.
He was good with his hands back then.
Patient. He'd explain the grain of the wood, the right way to sink a nail. I'd hold the board steady, paint the trim, lay the tiles, our bodies moving in a silent, easy partnership. We talked about growing old here, about grandchildren running on the beach, about sitting on the porch swing, watching the storms roll in. These weren't just words. They were blueprints for a future I believed in with every fiber of my being. The house itself held secrets. It had belonged to my mother's family for generations, passed down through aunts and uncles, a complicated web of ownership that eventually landed it in a state of disrepair, nobody wanting the burden or able to afford the renovations. My family, practical and rooted, saw it as a liability. A beautiful memory, perhaps, but a financial drain. When we expressed interest, young and naive and full of relentless energy, they were relieved. It wasn't a simple sale. There were conditions, clauses, things written in dense legal language that felt abstract and distant at the time. My father handled the details. He was a quiet man, meticulous. He believed in protecting his own. He made sure everything was done properly, legally ironclad. At the time, we barely skimmed the paperwork. It was family. It was trust. We were too busy dreaming of sun-bleached wood and the smell of the ocean. He was different back then. Or maybe I was different. Maybe I saw what I wanted to see. He was attentive, quick to laugh, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He'd bring me coffee in bed, leave little notes on the counter, remember the small things. He made me feel seen, cherished, secure. That security felt like a warm blanket, warding off the chill of the world outside. It extended to our finances, our home, our future. He handled the investments, the bills, the larger decisions. He was good with money, shrewd. He built a successful business, piece by careful piece. I trusted him implicitly. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my partner, my safe harbor. The summer house was the physical manifestation of that harbor, solid and real. The cracks started subtly. A late night at the office here, a business trip that extended an extra day there. He became distant, preoccupied, less talkative. The easy rhythm of our life together began to stutter. He'd scroll through his phone with a tight, private expression I couldn't decipher. He stopped wanting to go to the summer house as much. It was too much work, he said. Too far. He preferred sterile hotel rooms, the anonymity of convention centers. The salt air, the sand, they seemed to irritate him now. I told myself it was stress. The business was growing, demanding more of his time, his energy. I tried to be understanding. I tried to give him space. I filled the quiet evenings alone in the city house with books, with work, with a growing knot of unease in my stomach. Then came the calls. The hushed tones, the quick hang-ups when I entered the room. The phone face down on the table. His eyes that flicked away when I asked who it was. The carefully constructed facade of his life began to crumble, revealing something cold and unfamiliar underneath. I confronted him, my voice trembling, hoping, praying that I was wrong, that it was all in my head. He denied it, of course, with a practiced ease that chilled me. He accused me of being paranoid, insecure, suffocating. He turned my fear into a weapon against me. I started to doubt myself. Was I imagining things? Was I being unreasonable? The gaslighting was subtle at first, a slow erosion of my confidence, my sanity. He made me question my own reality. The inciting incident wasn't a single moment. It was a drip, drip, drip of cold water until the basin overflowed. Finding a stranger seat for a high-end restaurant, a reservation for 2 on a night he'd supposedly worked late. A text message notification that flashed on his screen before he snatched it away, a heart emoji from a name I didn't recognize. The smell of a perfume that wasn't mine on his jacket. Each one a pinprick, letting the air out of the balloon of my marriage. But the true moment, the one that crystallized everything, was the sudden, unexplained absence of the Volvo, the one that held all our summer memories, followed by his casual mention that he needed to check on the summer house. A check that seemed to extend for days. The early struggles were just trying to breathe. The weight of suspicion was crushing. I called the summer house number. It rang and rang. I called his cell. He didn't answer. Or he answered with clipped, impatient sentences claiming bad reception, urgent work. I drove out there, unannounced. The Volvo was there, but the house was locked up tight, curtains drawn. It felt wrong. Silent. A place that should have been full of light and air felt heavy with secrets. I walked the beach, the familiar rhythm of the waves offering no comfort, only a vast, indifferent roar. I felt like a ghost in my own life, haunting the edges of a reality I no longer understood. I left notes on the door, sent desperate texts. His replies were brief, dismissive. He was building a wall, brick by brick, and leaving me on the outside. The rising challenges were his escalating brazenness. He stopped hiding it so carefully. Late nights became overnights. The business trips became longer. He started talking about needing space. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. He suggested I spend more time at the city house, focus on my own interests. He was gently, firmly, easing me out of his life. He stopped wearing his wedding ring. He didn't offer an explanation. It was just
Gone.
like a promise broken and discarded. He became colder, his eyes flat and empty when they looked at me. The man I loved, the man I built a life with, was disappearing, replaced by a stranger who wore his face. The summer house remained his retreat. He would go there alone, or so he claimed. The whispers started. Friends who saw him, not alone, saw him with her. The name filtered back to me eventually. A woman from his office. Younger.
Blonde.
The clichés unfolded with brutal, predictable accuracy. Each whisper was a new cut. He stopped contributing financially to the city house, claiming business expenses were high. But his lifestyle didn't change. The expensive suits, the fancy dinners he suddenly had alone or with clients. The stark reality began to dawn. He wasn't just having an affair. He was disentangling himself, preparing for a new life, and he was doing it with a chilling lack of empathy. He was systematically dismantling our shared world. He talked about selling the city house, downsizing. It wasn't a conversation, it was a statement of intent. He was making decisions for us, without consulting me. My voice had become irrelevant. The fear intensified. I wasn't just losing my husband. I was losing my home, my financial security, the future I had planned. I felt adrift, the currents pulling me towards something dark and unknown. Then came the midpoint shift. I drove back to the summer house. This time I didn't stop at the bend in the road. I drove straight up the driveway. The red car was there. His Volvo was there. The front door was open. And I saw them, standing in the kitchen, laughing, sharing a cup of coffee. Her hand on his arm. His head bent towards hers. They looked comfortable, like they belonged there. In our kitchen, using our mugs, standing on the floorboards we'd sanded together. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was white-hot rage. And something else. A cold, hard calculation. They thought they were safe here, hidden away in our sanctuary. They had turned it into their love nest, a monument to his betrayal, right under my nose, in the place most sacred to me. He wasn't just having an affair. He was spitting on my history, on our shared past, on everything that house represented. The feeling was immediate, visceral. This wasn't just about a marriage anymore. This was about invasion, about violation. They had defiled the one place that held the purest memories of our life together. He had brought her into the very heart of my world and expected to get away with it. The rage cooled into something sharper, more focused. I wasn't just a hurt wife anymore. I was someone who had been wronged, deeply and deliberately. And something shifted in my perspective. I stopped seeing myself as a victim pleading for crumbs of his attention or affection. I saw myself as someone who had been robbed. And I wanted back what was mine. Not him. Never him again. But my dignity. My sense of self. And maybe, just maybe, the physical space they had stolen. The deepening crisis came when he served me with divorce papers. His terms were audacious. He proposed a settlement that was laughably low, designed to leave me with almost nothing, while he retained the bulk of the assets, including the summer house. He claimed it was business equity, tied to his company, not a marital asset in the traditional sense. He twisted the narrative, portraying me as dependent, irrational, perhaps even mentally unstable, given my paranoid reactions to his affair. His lawyer was slick, aggressive. My initial consultations with lawyers left me feeling even more despondent. The law seemed complicated, his assets hidden behind corporate veils. They warned me it would be a long, expensive, draining fight. He seemed to relish in my distress. He called, not to negotiate, but to tell me how happy he was now, how free he felt. He described weekends at the summer house with her, the ocean air, the peace he'd found. It was a deliberate cruelty, designed to grind me down. He wanted me to surrender. He wanted me to walk away with nothing but the tattered remnants of my pride. He underestimated me. He thought my tears were a sign of weakness. He didn't realize they were just fuel for the fire building inside me. The summer house became the focal point of his psychological warfare. He sent me photos, ostensibly accidentally, showing her on the porch swing, her feet up on the railing we'd installed together. He posted subtly worded updates on social media about finding true happiness in unexpected places, geotagged at the summer house. He was marking his territory, flaunting his new life in the place that was inextricably linked to my old one. The audacity was breathtaking. It fueled my anger, yes, but it also gave me clarity. This wasn't just about the money or the property anymore. It was about a fundamental disrespect, a complete erasure of my existence. He was systematically trying to dismantle not just our marriage, but my very history. I realized then that I couldn't just get divorced. I had to fight. Not for him, not for the marriage, but for myself. For the woman I was before he tried to break me. The turning point wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a slow, deliberate journey back to my roots. Back to the people who had always had my back, quietly, reliably. My family. I hadn't wanted to burden them with the messy details of my failing marriage, my husband's infidelity, his cruelty. But now, facing financial ruin and emotional annihilation, I knew I couldn't fight this alone. I went to my father. I sat in his study, the room smelling of old books and pipe tobacco, a scent that instantly transported me back to childhood security. I laid it all out. The affair, the summer house, the divorce papers, his tactics. I expected sympathy, maybe some practical advice. What I got was something far more potent. My father listened, his face impassive at first, then tightening around the jawline. When I finished, there was a long silence, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. He steepled his fingers, his eyes sharp and clear as they met mine. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't tell me to be strong or move on. Instead, he said one sentence that changed everything. The summer house, he said, his voice low and steady, is not his to claim. I frowned, confused. He owned it, didn't he? We'd bought it. Or rather, we had paid for it. He saw my confusion. He got up, walked to a filing cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder, brittle with age. He laid the papers on the desk. The original transfer documents. The legal agreements from when we acquired the property from the family. He pointed to a specific clause, buried deep within the complex legal jargon. We didn't sell it to you two, not outright, he explained, his voice still quiet but filled with steel I hadn't heard in years. Not in the traditional sense. Your great-aunt insisted. She was particular. She loved that house fiercely. She wanted to ensure it stayed in the family, truly in the family. The agreement was structured differently. It was a beneficial ownership transfer, contingent on certain conditions. Conditions tied directly to the marital unit, as it existed then. There were stipulations. Clauses about dissolution, about maintaining the property, about its primary use. If those conditions were breached, particularly in ways that demonstrated a fundamental departure from the original intent, say, if the marital unit ceased to exist, or if the property was used in a manner inconsistent with the family's values and the spirit of the agreement, like, say, being occupied solely by one partner and someone else, not part of the original marital unit, he paused, letting the implication hang in the air. Then the original owners, the family trust, had the right, the obligation really, to reacquire the property at the original transfer price, a price that 40 years later is negligible. My breath hitched. The dry legal term spun in my head. It wasn't a sale. Not really. It was a perpetual lease, disguised as a transfer, with an ironclad family clause. A safety net I never knew existed. My father hadn't just sold us a house. He had protected a legacy, and in doing so, protected me. He hadn't mentioned it explicitly before because, why would he? We were a happily married couple, building our future in the house. The conditions were never meant to be invoked. Until now. My father looked at me, his eyes holding a depth of understanding and quiet resolve. He never read the details, did he? He said softly. Just signed where he was told. He was always too busy, too important. For the fine print, a slow smile spread across my face, cold and sharp. He thought he was so smart, so careful with his money, his assets. He thought he could just take what he wanted. But he missed the most crucial detail. The one written in invisible ink, protected by family ties thicker than any legal document he'd ever drafted. The plan was simple, elegant in its brutality. My family, specifically my father and his siblings who were party to the original agreement, would exercise their right. They would invoke the clause. Reacquire the property. The summer house would revert to the family trust. Not to me, not to him, but back to its origins. He couldn't fight the family trust. He couldn't fight the original, legally sound agreement. His claim, based on his perceived ownership, was built on sand. And the tide was coming in. The beauty of it was the element of surprise. He was so focused on the divorce proceedings, on hiding assets, on grinding me down, that he never saw this coming. He had no idea the foundation he was standing on was rotten. We worked with a different set of lawyers, specialists in property law and trusts, quiet operators who didn't tip their hand. We gathered the documentation. We prepared the necessary notices. We waited. I continued with the divorce proceedings, playing along, letting him think he had the upper hand. He was so confident, so arrogant. He talked about selling the city house, moving full-time to the coast, starting his real life with her. He had no idea his castle was about to be demolished. The waiting was the hardest part, a coiled tension in my gut. Every interaction with him, every dismissive email, every smug phone call, felt like a test of my resolve. He talked about renovations he was planning for the summer house, changes he wanted to make with her. Each word was a deliberate barb, meant to inflict pain. I just listened, my silence a carefully constructed mask. Let him dig his own grave, I thought. Let him pour his energy and anticipation into a future that would never exist. My family was ready. The legal wheels were turning, slowly, inexorably. The day was set for the formal notification. It wasn't a court date for the divorce. It was a legal formality related to the property trust. A quiet, unassuming legal procedure. But it would be the moment his world imploded. The day arrived. I wasn't there for the initial serving of the papers. My lawyer advised against it. Too emotional, too unpredictable. But I insisted on being present for the aftermath. I needed to see it. Not out of simple revenge, though there was certainly an element of that, but because I needed to witness the physical manifestation of the shift. The balance of power restoring itself. The truth asserting its dominance over his carefully constructed lies. The legal team, accompanied by a representative from the family trust and a sheriff's deputy, a standard precaution, though they didn't anticipate trouble, went to the summer house. I followed an hour later, parking my car again at the bend in a road, just like that first day. But this time, the feeling was different. Less dread, more anticipation. A cold, clear certainty. I walked down the dirt road, the familiar crunch of gravel under my feet. The air was crisp, the ocean roaring louder today, as if in approval. As I rounded the bend, I saw the cars. The sheriff's cruiser, the lawyer's sensible sedans, and the red car, and the Volvo. They were all still there. But the scene in front of the house was chaos. The front door was wide open. Papers were scattered on the porch. His mistress was standing near the porch swing, arms wrapped around herself, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she was about to cry. And him. He was on the ground. He wasn't collapsed in a heap, not exactly. He was on his knees, half leaning against the porch railing, one hand pressed to his chest, his face ashen. The color had drained completely, leaving his skin pasty and slick with sweat. His eyes were wide, unfocused, staring at something I couldn't see. The sheriff's deputy stood nearby, looking concerned but detached. The lawyers were talking quietly to each other, gathering their briefcases. It was over. Just like that. The complex legal maneuver, the quiet invoking of an ancient family rite, had landed like a physical blow. I walked towards the house, my footsteps steady. His eyes flicked towards me as I approached, and in them, I saw a flicker of recognition, then disbelief, then pure, unadulterated horror. He hadn't expected me. Not here, not now. He thought he had won. He thought this was just a minor legal nuisance, perhaps related to the divorce, something his lawyers would handle easily. He had clearly just been told the truth. The summer house wasn't his. It had never entirely been his. The foundation of his arrogance, his plans with her, his vision of a new life built on my ruins, had just been obliterated. I stopped a few feet away from him. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The papers, now clutched in one of the lawyer's hands, the presence of the sheriff, his own physical state, it said everything. He tried to speak, a strangled sound catching in his throat.
You.
You knew, he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. His eyes, usually so full of self-importance, were pleading, confused. He looked utterly broken. Not by sorrow, but by the shattering of his control, his certainty, his perceived power. He had been so consumed with his own schemes, his own desires, that he had completely overlooked the quiet strength of the family, the intricate web of history and law that protected what was truly theirs. He had built his victory on a lie he told himself, that he was untouchable, that he could take whatever he wanted without consequence. I looked at him, at the man who had shared my bed, my life, my dreams, now reduced to a pathetic figure on his knees, his mistress looking on in dismay. I felt nothing. No triumph, no pity, just a vast, empty calm. The fire of rage had burned itself out, leaving only ash. The summer house stood silently behind him, a witness to the scene. It was just a building. The memories, the true anchor, were inside me, safe from his reach. My father was right. He never read the fine print. He never understood that some things are protected by more than just money and ambition. They are protected by blood, by history, by quiet, unbreakable bonds. And he had just run headfirst into the wall he never knew was there. The legal process unfolded relatively quickly after that. With the summer house reacquired by the family trust, his leverage in the divorce evaporated. The terms changed dramatically. His attempts to hide assets were uncovered, his credibility undermined. The divorce was finalized, not on his terms, but on terms that were fair, even generous to me, thanks to the financial security my family's actions had ensured. He lost more than the summer house. He lost his reputation, his standing. His business suffered. His mistress, it turned out, was not interested in a man who was no longer wealthy or powerful. She left. Just left. The red car was gone from the summer house driveway the next day. I never went back to the summer house to live. My family offered, of course. It was technically ours again, collectively. But the thought felt
Wrong.
too many ghosts. Too much pain clinging to the walls. It was a place of beautiful memories, yes, but also the stage for the cruelest betrayal. The family decided to keep it, maintain it, a quiet reminder of their foresight and protection. They use it sometimes for family gatherings. I visit sometimes, walk the beach, listen to the waves. The salt air still carries memories, but they feel different now. Less like open wounds, more like faded photographs. I rebuilt my life, piece by careful piece. It wasn't easy. The scars are still there, invisible but deep. The trust that was broken is the hardest thing to mend. But I learned that strength isn't always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, rooted in something ancient and solid. I learned that the people who truly love you protect you in ways you might not even understand until years later. And I learned that trying to build your future on a foundation of lies and stolen dreams is like building a house on shifting sand. Eventually, inevitably, it will collapse. I saw him once, months later, in the city. He looked older, smaller. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a weary resentment. He didn't approach me. He just watched me from across the street, his eyes hollow. I felt no urge to gloat, no satisfaction in his visible decline. Just a profound sense of closure. The chapter was closed. The story had ended. The summer house, the symbol of his betrayal and my reclaiming, stood empty for a long time that winter, buffeted by storms, cleansed by the wind and the rain, waiting for the spring, waiting for the light to return. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.